very windy outside, so you might hear some light blowing noises in the background. Like anyway, last time I showed a quick history of the map, how I made the push roads using conveyor functions, and rebuilt it from almost scratch. To start this video, here's a few things I didn't get around to talking about last time. First off, to make maps, I use Hammer++ by Fecal2. I'm gonna say that because it doesn't sound like fecal. A version of Hammer that has a lot of extra features such as a rendered lighting preview, skybox preview, and a bunch of other nice quality of life stuff. I would recommend it over stock Hammer at this point as it's also more stable to use. To compile maps, I use a program called CompilePal. This program has an interface for mapping compile options, and it also compiles maps separate from Hammer. This frees up Hammer to be used while the map is compiling and reduces the chance of a crash. Other programs include GCF Scrape to look through Source Engine game files, and VTF Edit to make and create textures for maps. I think that's a good segue into the next part. Something else I skipped over last time was that I've made quite a few custom textures for this map. A lot of them come from real photos I've taken in Photobashed and painted over in Krita, an open source painting program. It has a tiling feature when Shift+W is pressed that I used a lot for this part. I have a growing collection of surface photos whenever I see something that looks like it could be interesting. I probably look very strange taking photos of the ground and walls, but you gotta do what you gotta do. The texture for the pillars came from this train station. The floor and ceiling tile textures came from my city's museum, funnily enough. I recycled the ceiling texture for the floor tiles, but you didn't hear that from me. The wood floor tiles was a texture I made back when I first started working on the first museum map. I can't find the original texture, but I know I got a bunch of wood planks, lined them up and painted over them. The Source Engine handles textures by using VTF, Valve Texture Files, and VMF, Valve Material Files. The game reads the VMF, which is a script that takes one or two or more of the VTFs, and applies a series of effects to them. Some examples of effects are adding a texture when approaching a wall, making a texture transparent, making it shiny, making it move, and a bunch of other stuff. Now that we've caught up, I want to get the tunnel all good to go. I copied the lights from an older version and aligned them. Pretty easy to do. For these sloping areas, you can align textures diagonally. Hold down Alt and make sure the texture lines up and apply it to a nearby brush. Then make the needed alignment changes to make it work out. I also finished off the outside buildings. This was getting fiddly and I was getting sick of adjusting all these brushes, so I just kinda did a slap job to finish it. I might make it better later. While compiling, I noticed a few problems. I had to fix the spread of light as it was causing errors. Not a big one, but I like no errors. Light spot entities cast a cone of light within a 90-degree angle. They're used much more often than normal light entities, as you can have a better control over the results, as the normal ones just kind of like all over the place. Newbie make a mistake, use light spot, don't use regular lights. I tried some nighttime lighting outside, not huge on it, we'll probably change it later. This was also a chance to put some light posts around the outside road. Looks a little more lived in now. Now, back to textures. I looked at the walls on the outside and wasn't happy with their appearance. So I looked at some pictures of my city's museum and realized I needed a lot more glass. I tried at first making a multi-part glass texture, but it looked kinda So instead I made a single texture version that looked nice, but I needed some VTF and VMF tweaking to get it working. And there's a few transparency settings I tried before I got one that lets you see through and also use cube maps for all the lovely shininess. After doing the glass, I started building the second floor of the museum. I made room for the first new exhibit. I was talking about scrolling textures earlier for a reason. I had an idea for a room after seeing these images of men lining up for bizarre food. So using the moving texture feature, I made it look like they're all heading towards this blue chicken. I think there's more I can do with this idea, so I'll come back to it later. After doing some assorted fixes, I next moved on to making a dev texture room. I feel you don't see a dev texture room very much anymore. They have a lot of interesting properties, but some don't appear to work or display properly in TF2, so it was a bit of trial and error before I picked out the ones that worked. I used as many as I could without something breaking or looking weird. I think quite a few of these are intended for overlays or UIs rather than actual materials. I also set up a lighting display that mixes up RGB lighting on the dev textures. I love example scenes like this one. Gives me big museum display vibes. Also reminds me of those early Half-Life 2 tech demos from like the 2000s. Now here's a good time to talk about the real-time camera. This has been a Source Engine feature since Half-Life 2, but for whatever reason it was not available in TF2 until the VScript update. You can see it get used on Versus Hale's Skirmish. The other monitor is Merc Park screenshots. You may also remember this being a feature in Gmod, but it's done a little differently as it's using a prop material rather than a map one. To set up a real-time camera, we need a point camera entity and a Func monitor brush with a texture compatible with the camera function. There's a few different textures and they're all dev textures, so let's chuck them into the dev room. There's one I could not get working, so I didn't use it. The rest work fine, and I even made a kinda cool stack of monitors using their transparency. While we're talking about the cameras, you know how when you join a map you get a bunch of different views? This is done using an Info Observer point camera. I've already set a few up on this map. Next time, I want to work on some optimization. I must leave, it sounds like my house is getting blown away. Ooh, that's a very squeaky chair, that ruined the outro.